Stop. Before you do anything else today, I need to ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly at peace? Not just quiet, not just alone, but genuinely, deeply at peace inside? If you had to think about it for more than 3 seconds, this video was made for you. Here's something nobody wants to say out loud. Getting older is supposed to bring wisdom, but for so many people over 60, it brings something else entirely. More worry, more frustration, more mornings where your body aches, your mind races, and the world feels like it's moving faster than you ever agreed to. You've done everything right. You raised your family. You showed up. You sacrificed. And now, after all of that, why does patience feel so impossible to find? Here's the truth. Medicine will never put on a prescription label. Impatience isn't a character flaw. It's a wound, a quiet, invisible wound, carved by decades of doing too much, feeling too little, and never once being told that it's okay to slow down. Today, we're going to change that. I'll share timeless practices drawn from 2,500 years of Buddhist wisdom that will show you how patience can do what no pill, no supplement, no doctor's visit ever could. Heal you, quietly, from the inside out. So take a breath, a real one, and stay with me. What you hear next might be the conversation you've been waiting for your entire life. On what patience really is and what it's not, let me ask you something that might sting a little. How many times in your life has someone told you to just be patient without ever showing you how? How many times have you swallowed your frustration, smiled through the pain, and told yourself, I just need to try harder? And how's that been working for you? Here's what nobody ever told you. Most of us were never taught patience. We were taught silence. We were taught endurance. And we were taught to hold it together, no matter what it cost us inside. And we've been paying that cost every single day. In our blood pressure, in our sleepless nights, in the tightness that lives permanently somewhere between our shoulders. That's not patience. That's survival. And there's a world of difference between the two. In Buddhism, true patience has a name, Khanti, and it doesn't mean gritting your teeth. It doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means something far more powerful, the ability to remain unshaken while life moves at its own pace. Not broken, not bitter, not bracing, just steady, like a mountain that doesn't argue with the storm. It doesn't fight the wind. It doesn't beg the rain to stop. It simply stands. And when the storm passes, the mountain is still there. That's Khanti. That's what we're building today. Now here's the twist that took me years to understand. I used to think I was a patient person. I meditated. I read. I taught others how to find stillness. But one afternoon, sitting in a hospital waiting room, watching the clock, jaw tight, foot tapping, I realized something that humbled me completely. I wasn't being patient. I was just being quiet about my impatience. There's a difference, a painful, important difference. Real patience isn't the absence of frustration. It's what you do with frustration when it arrives. Do you become it, or do you breathe through it and let it pass like weather? Our research now confirms what monks have known for centuries. People who cultivate genuine patience carry measurably lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone that inflames your joints, disrupts your sleep, and quietly accelerates aging in ways no mirror can hide. Patience isn't just a virtue, it's a biological shield. So tonight, try this one small shift. The next time impatience rises in you, and it will, don't push it down. Don't apologize for it. Just pause, breathe, and ask, am I being patient or am I just holding my breath? That question alone can begin to change everything, because most people will spend the rest of their lives mistaking endurance for strength. Carrying tension, they believe, is courage, never knowing there was another way. But you're still here, you're still listening, and that already makes you different. Now, Makantari, if impatience is a wound, the next question matters deeply. Why does that wound cut deeper after 60? Why do small things, a slow driver, a late call, a body that won't cooperate, feel so much harder to bear than they used to? The answer isn't what you think, and it might finally explain everything you've been feeling but couldn't find the words for. Let's keep going. 2. Why impatience hurts more after 60. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You used to let things go easily. A rude comment, a long line, a plan that fell apart. You'd shake it off, move on, forget about it by dinner. But now, a slow internet connection ruins your morning. A canceled appointment sits in your chest for hours. A thoughtless word from someone you love stays with you for days. And somewhere in the quiet, you've started to wonder, what's wrong with me? Why has everything become so hard to bear? Nothing is wrong with you, nothing at all, but something has changed. And it's time someone finally explained why. Here's what's actually happening inside your body. After 60, the brain produces less dopamine, the chemical that helps you feel rewarded, motivated, and emotionally resilient. Less dopamine means a lower threshold for frustration. It means small irritations feel larger. It means the gap between calm and overwhelmed becomes razor thin. And this isn't a weakness, this is biology. But here's the part that breaks my heart, and I say this with deep respect. Most people over 60 don't know this, so they blame themselves. They call themselves difficult, bitter, too sensitive. They apologize for feelings that were never their fault to begin with. There's a Zen koan I return to often. A student once asked his master, "How long will it take me to find peace?" The master replied, 10 years. The student said, What if I work twice as hard?" The master looked at him gently and said, "Then 20 years. The student was confused. How can more effort lead to less progress? And the master simply smiled, because peace is not chased, it is allowed. The harder you fight your impatience, the deeper it digs in. The more you demand calm from yourself, the further calm retreats. This is the cruelest trap of aging, and almost no one talks about it. I once worked with a man, 71 years old, a retired engineer, sharp as ever, who came to me exhausted, not from work, not from illness, but from fighting himself. Every morning he woke up tense. Every evening he went to bed angry at how tense he'd been. He told me, "I feel like I'm running out of time. And the more I feel that, the less I can enjoy the time I have." That sentence, I've never forgotten it, because that's what impatience really is. After 60, it's not anger, it's grief. Grief for time. Grief for the body you used to have. Grief for the life you thought would look different by now. And grief, when it has nowhere to go, becomes tension. Tension becomes inflammation. Inflammation becomes the ache you wake up with every morning and can't explain to your doctor. Your body isn't falling apart, it's carrying something that was never meant to be carried alone. So no, don't you dare call yourself impatient like it's a character flaw, when you are someone who has carried more than most people will ever know, for longer than anyone ever asked, with less support than you deserved. Of course, the weight feels heavier now. Of course, the small things hit harder. That's not a weakness. That's the cost of a life fully lived. Most people will spend years blaming themselves for this, shrinking, apologizing, never understanding what's truly happening beneath the surface. But you're beginning to see it clearly. And that clarity, that's where healing starts. Now that you understand why patience has become harder, the real question opens up before you. How do you actually grow it back? Not through willpower, not through trying harder, but through something ancient, something simple, something your body already knows how to receive. That's exactly where we're going next. 3. The 3 Buddhist practices that grow patience like roots. What if the answer you've been searching for isn't something new? What if it's something 2,500 years old that the modern world simply forgot to tell you about? Because here's what I've learned after decades of studying Buddhist wisdom. Patience cannot be forced. It cannot be downloaded. It cannot be bought in a bottle or prescribed in a clinic. It can only be grown, slowly, quietly, from the inside out, like roots that go deep before anything rises above the ground. And today, I want to give you 3 of the most powerful seeds you will ever plant. The first practice is called upaka. In Pali, the ancient language of Buddhist scripture, it means equanimity. But don't let that word intimidate you. It simply means this: caring deeply without being destroyed by what you care about. Think about how much energy you spend being pulled underwater by things you cannot control. The doctor's appointment was rescheduled. The family member who doesn't call, when the body that won't cooperate the way it used to. Upekkha doesn't ask you to stop caring. It asks you to care from solid ground. Here's how to begin. The next time frustration rises, ask yourself one quiet question. Will this matter in 10 years? In 10 days? In 10 hours? That question is a lifeline. It doesn't dismiss your pain. It simply gives it its proper size. The second practice is one I return to every single morning. It's called kin hin, walking meditation. And before you think, I can't sit still for meditation, that's exactly why this one was made for you. You don't sit, you walk, slowly, deliberately. Each step is placed with full attention, each breath timed with each movement. I'll be honest with you. The first time I tried Kinhin, my neighbor stopped her car and asked if I'd hurt my ankle. I was moving that slowly, but something happened in those 20 minutes that no amount of rushing had ever given me. My mind went quiet. Not forced quiet, not suppressed quite, but the kind of quiet that feels like coming home. Because when your body moves slowly, your mind has no choice but to follow. That is the gift of Kinhin. Not exercise, not performance, just presence. One step at a time. The third practice is the one most people never hear about. And in my experience, it's the most powerful of all. It's called Tonglen. And it will ask something of you that goes against every instinct you have. One, instead of pushing your impatience away, breathe it in. I know, that sounds wrong. Everything in us wants to reject discomfort, to escape it, to fix it, to make it stop. But Tonglen teaches us this. What you resist persists. What you embrace transforms. So when impatience arrives, and it will, breathe it in like a dark cloud. Hold it gently for just a moment, then breathe out something softer. Warmth, space, compassion, for yourself first. Then, if for everyone else who is struggling the same way. You are not alone in this. Every person who has ever lived has fought this same quiet battle. And when you breathe through it instead of fighting it, something ancient in you begins to soften. 3 practices, 15 minutes a day, no equipment, no cost, no prescription needed. Most people will read this and think, that seems too simple, and they'll keep waiting for something more complicated, something more impressive, something that matches the size of their suffering. But simplicity is not weakness. Simplicity is the whole point. The bamboo doesn't grow through force, it grows through consistency, through quiet daily commitment to putting down roots. So do you. These 3 practices plant the seeds. But here's what most people never discover. Patience doesn't just heal your mind, it changes your body at a level that science is only now beginning to measure. What happens inside you when patience finally takes root is something that will change how you think about healing forever. Let's go there together. 4. What patience does to your body that medicine can't. Let me ask you something your doctor has probably never asked. Not what are your symptoms, not what medications are you taking, but this. How long have you been at war with your own body? Because here's what I've come to believe. After years of studying healing traditions that predate modern medicine by centuries, most chronic illnesses in older adults aren't just physical. It's the body keeping score of every battle the mind never finished. To think about what happens inside you every time impatience strikes. Your jaw tightens, your shoulders rise, your breath goes shallow, your heart beats faster, and your body, your loyal, exhausted body, shifts into emergency mode. It floods your system with cortisol, the same stress hormone that inflames your joints, disrupts your sleep, weakens your immune system, and accelerates the aging of every cell you have. This isn't anxiety, this is biology. And it's happening every single time you fight against the present moment. But here's what changes when patience begins to take root. The vagus nerve, the longest nerve in your body, running from your brain all the way to your gut, begins to activate. Your heart rate slows, your blood pressure softens, your immune system, finally freed from constant emergency signals, begins doing what it was always meant to do: protect you, repair you, restore you. This is not mysticism. This is measurable. This is what happens when you stop fighting time and start moving with it. I once sat with a woman, 72 years old, sharp eyes, quiet voice, who told me something I've never forgotten. She said, I didn't change my diet. I didn't change my exercise. I just stopped arguing with my life. And 6 months later, my doctor cut my blood pressure medication in half. She wasn't extraordinary. She was simply done fighting. And her body, or finally heard, finally trusted, finally allowed to rest, began to heal. You are not broken. You are not too far gone. You are not beyond this. You are simply someone who has been in emergency mode for far too long. And your body has been waiting, patiently, faithfully, quietly, for you to put down the fight. Every slow breath you take is a message to your cells. We are safe now. You can rest. You can heal. That message, simple as it sounds, is more powerful than anything in a prescription bottle. Most people will never make this connection. They'll keep treating symptoms while the deeper cause goes untouched. But you're beginning to understand what's really been happening. And understanding is always where healing begins. Now, we've talked about what patience does to your body, but there's one place impatience cuts deepest of all, a place most people never think to look. It's not in your relationships. It's not in your circumstances. It's in the mirror. Because the harshest impatience you carry, the one doing the most damage, might be the impatience you have with yourself. And that is exactly where we're going next. 5. The deepest patience, learning to wait for yourself. I want you to stop for a moment and think about the person you've been hardest on in your entire life. Not your children, not your spouse, not the people who hurt you, the person you've criticized the most, forgiven the least, expected the most from, and thanked the least. I think you already know who that is. It's you. It's always been you. How many mornings have you woken up and before your feet even touched the floor, the voice was already there? You should be further along by now. You've wasted so much time. Why can't you just be better? That voice, quiet, relentless, merciless. You wouldn't speak that way to someone you love. You wouldn't speak that way to a stranger on the street, but to yourself every single day for decades. And you've called it motivation, discipline, high standards. But I want to offer you a different name for it. Impatience. The deepest kind. The kind that doesn't make noise. It just slowly turns off your light. In Buddhism, there is a practice called metta, loving kindness, and it begins not with sending love to others, but with receiving it yourself. Because the teachers understood something that takes most of us a lifetime to learn. You cannot give what you have never allowed yourself to receive. You cannot offer patience to the world if you have never once offered it to yourself. I want to tell you about a moment that changed me. I was standing in front of a mirror, looking at the lines on my face, the gray that had crept in, the tiredness behind my eyes. And without meaning to, I thought, I've wasted so much time. And then, just as quickly, I caught myself. Because I realized that thought was not wisdom. That thought was not true. That thought was impatience. Dressed up as a reflection, it wasn't asking me to grow. It was asking me to shrink. And I had been listening to it for far too long. Here's what I know to be true, not just as a student of Buddhism, but as someone who has sat with hundreds of people in the quiet of their hardest years. The ones who heal most deeply are not the ones who pushed hardest. They are the ones who finally became gentle with themselves. Not weak, not passive, not giving up. Gentle. The way you would be with someone you love who is doing their best. Because that's what you are. You are someone doing their best. In a body that's been through more than it was ever warned about. In a life that looked different from what you planned. With a heart that kept going even when it had every reason to stop. The bamboo spent 4 years growing in the dark. Nobody saw it. Nobody celebrated it. Nobody told it that it was doing enough. But it never stopped. It never apologized for how long it was taking. It just kept building roots, quietly, faithfully, in its own time. Oh, that is you. That has always been you. So tonight I want to ask you to do something that might feel uncomfortable, something that might bring up tears, or resistance, or a voice that says, I don't deserve this. I want you to place your hand on your heart and say, out loud or in silence, just these words, I have done enough. I am enough. And I am still becoming. Not because it's easy, but because it's true. And because your body, that faithful, tireless body, has been waiting to hear those words from you for a very long time. Most people will never say those words. They'll carry the weight of their own impatience all the way to the end, never knowing how much lighter life could have felt. But you're still here, still open, still willing. And that willingness is not small. That willingness is everything. You came here today perhaps feeling tired, perhaps feeling like patience was something other people had. Not you, not anymore. But look at where you are now. You now know that impatience was never your flaw. It was your wound. You now know that patience isn't something you force, it's something you grow, quietly, daily, from the inside out. You now know that your body has been listening to every battle your mind was fighting, and it has been waiting, so patiently, for you to finally lay down the sword. So let me leave you with this. The bamboo spent 4 years in the dark, unseen, uncelebrated, building roots nobody could see, and then it rose. You have spent decades doing the same, building something the world couldn't always see, surviving things the world will never fully know, and you are still here, still breathing, still becoming. That is nothing. That is everything. Yeah, I have never, not once, met a person who regretted becoming more patient, but I have met countless people who whispered near the end, I wish I had been gentler, with life, with others, with myself. Don't let that be your story. You still have time. You still have breath. You still have today. And today is enough to begin. If something in this video stirred something real inside you, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And leave me a comment below. Just one sentence. What is one thing you will choose to be patient with starting today? Your answer matters. Your journey matters. And you're not too old. You are not too late. You are not too broken. The roots are already there. Trust them, tend them, and watch what still dares to grow.